Evening, people, and welcome to the Red Zone, where we have a blockbuster in store for you tonight. I'm Asim, your host, and I'm excited and really honoured to welcome Ben and Shahid Bhai in the house as well, and alongside the ever-present Gene. We've deliberately timed the show today, just a few days after the Leicester game, as we can just bring Ben and banter him with the masterclass of finishing from that centre back. We'll be hiring him soon. We'll be hiring him soon to have a few one-on-one drills with our striker, the big man up front. But honestly, it's a pleasure and an honour to welcome two of these guys tonight. How are we doing, Ben? And like I said, when can we hire your centre back to have some one-on-one drills in goal scoring with Nunes?
Doing well, and Happy New Year to all of you and to everybody listening as well. Let's hope it's full of slightly more success than Wout had facing his own goal, but very unfortunate. And obviously, as somebody that follows Leicester, I thought that when the early goal went in, Liverpool were in big trouble and Leicester looked dangerous on the counter-attack throughout the whole game. But from Liverpool's perspective, it's what you need when you're trying to restore a bit of parity really in terms of form and get back into, at worst, that top four. It's that bit of luck. Sometimes you have to win ugly. Sometimes you need a break that goes in your way. And what I think we saw from Liverpool in that game is a reflection of what we've seen throughout large parts of the season, where you can see the identity, but you can also see the gaps that are missing and the areas that need strengthening. And then naturally, when it all comes down to that front three or four, depending on what we're talking about formational wise, if it's only those that are technically the weight of goals, or if it's those behind them that should be pitching in with a bit more, then three or four players come to mind. And one is obviously Darwin Nunez, who's doing a lot in games, but not finding goals. So then that's putting pressure on Mo Salah and others within the team to contribute a bit more because those chances are being missed. And I think that when Nunez went through and clipped the post and then Face ended up putting it in his own net, it summed everything up. Because you've got a player in Nunez that gets into the right positions, that has the big chance, and he's fractionally away so many times from scoring it or making the right decision or getting that bit of luck. And obviously against Leicester, there was a bit of fortune because Face still put the ball in the back of the net. So it was Face saving, literally, to use a bad term, from the perspective of Darwin Nunez. But I think that's Liverpool in a nutshell at the moment. They're heading in the right direction, but they're looking a bit thin at times, and they're not as clinical as they were perhaps 12 months ago.
Yeah, 100%. I think, Ben, you summed it really well. I think disjointed Liverpool is the way we sort of describe them. But it's also a big welcome, like I mentioned, to Shahid, who makes his debut tonight. And I don't know what's taken so long, Shahid, but yeah, like I said, he's not just a friend of the channel, but he's a dear, dear brother to us. And he travels all the world, all around the globe to watch his beloved Liverpool. And we bumped into him many, many times. And he's up at 3 a.m. in Pakistan or Dubai just to see if any embargoed news is going to get released. Up again tonight. I believe you're in Dubai today, but
yes, I'm in Dubai. It's 1 a.m. here, and we're still waiting for the first signing of the winter window from Liverpool. As Liverpool fans, we're expecting something, but it's great to be on here and lovely to have Ben on as well. So look forward to having a great chat.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And Gene, do you want an introduction as well?
I'm all right. I think we're done with the intros. I think, yeah, I'm good with it, man.
We were going to move on anyway.
I knew that was coming. That's why I said move on.
But we'll come to Ben first. Look, where do we start? We'll start with Enzo Fernandez, Ben. It's after the World Cup. Liverpool all of a sudden were supposed to be on the verge of signing this brilliant midfielder who can play in various positions. But since then, there have been sort of other parties come to the table. And now, if we're sort of, led to believe the reports coming through, Chelsea are nailed on to get this brilliant midfielder in their ranks. And what's the latest with Enzo Fernandez?
Well, I certainly wouldn't say that Chelsea are nailed on to sign Enzo Fernandez, but I would also add that they're the only suitor negotiating with Benfica, who had not planned for any of this, because Enzo Fernandez has only played 24 games for them since joining from River Plate, even with an amazing World Cup, winning the tournament, being named the best young player. Benfica still felt like the release clause would offer some protection from a mid-season exit. So naturally, there is interest, but a lot of the suitors that have been mentioned, Liverpool included and Real Madrid as well, were looking at Enzo Fernandez before the World Cup, which is normal. It's a bit of a myth that somebody does something across a short tournament games-wise and only becomes a target after that. Usually you're aware of the target, you're scouting the target, and then a positive performance at the World Cup can make up a club's mind, of course, or it can change the valuation. But very rarely do people see a player they didn't know about or were not considering, and then over a short period of time, like the World Cup, suddenly make their mind up. So Enzo Fernandez on the radar of Liverpool, of Manchester United, of Real Madrid, and of Chelsea long before. But of course, knowing Benfica are historically a selling club, and I don't mean that in any negative way, it's simply a statistic that since 2000, they've sold over €1 billion worth of players, and elite level clubs like Liverpool, Manchester United, Chelsea, Real Madrid realise that at some point they can plan for the player. And even with Jude Bellingham and Dortmund, it's exactly the same thing. So there's often this crossover in the media landscape where clubs are working on players like Jude Bellingham and Liverpool for many windows. And therefore, when people get wind of talks or interest, they presume it's imminent. So the first thing to say on Enzo Fernandez is only Chelsea have ever come to the table and engaged with Benfica. Liverpool never placed a bid. I know there's some reports out there that say to the contrary, but my Liverpool sources have categorically stated that they never went in for Enzo Fernandez because they know the valuation is crazy. So Chelsea now have a choice to make. Number one, which is the simplest approach, and it's not the actual decision they've chosen to go with yet. They could pay the release clause, which is €120 million plus all the taxes and liabilities. And then because they have player buy-in, they would get a deal done that Benfica can't control. But in paying that amount, it has to be in one lump sum. And Chelsea don't want to do that. It's not a sensible decision, especially knowing that regardless of his potential, it's way above the current market value by whatever metric you use. So broadly speaking, €55 million. Some would say a bit more, some would say a bit less. But whatever metric you use, the release clause is purposefully miles above the actual player valuation. So then Chelsea decide we can either A, which has been their first approach, pay more than the release clause, which might seem crazy, but then they hope to negotiate payment terms over far more years. And in doing so, paying out smaller installments. So by the time it all adds up to that kind of huge value, Enzo Fernandez might be 24, 25, 26, and an elite level player worth what Chelsea are paying by that stage. And they can then split that cost over different financial fair play cycles, meaning that in every 3 years, they will still be within the allowed boundaries, which is a loss of £105 million or less. And then the third option in all of this, which is being underreported, is that Chelsea could go to the opposite extreme and they can lowball Benfica if they don't get success with this tactic. And at the moment, they're waiting for an answer from Benfica on the tactic that I've just outlined. But if Benfica say no, Chelsea could come back in and say, well, okay, you don't want a big number because it's paid over so many different years. So we're going to give you a smaller number than the release clause, but we'll pay it in a lump sum. And that will be very interesting because maybe what Benfica want here is above market value and in one go. Can they therefore be persuaded to take 90 to 100 million if it's paid in one lump sum? And that is another consideration that Chelsea could use. And then, of course, if nothing works, they could start negotiating and or trying to pre-agree for a summer move. So those are the kind of four options outlined. Release clause number one, above the release clause number two, below the release clause, but in one lump sum, or giving up on January and going for the summer. And Chelsea's primary tactic is the second one of those options, above the release clause, split over lots of different years. And once Benfica provide an answer, at that point, Chelsea will know which approach they can take and whether they have to table another offer. And from what I understand, it's incorrect reports in Portugal saying it's done. There's a verbal agreement. Benfica haven't been engaging directly face-to-face with Chelsea in the last 24 hours. They've been having key internal meetings to decide whether they're prepared to do anything other than tell Chelsea you've got to trigger the release clause. Because whereas with the release clause, they cannot reject that if triggered and the player wants to leave. Any other offer, Benfica can still say no. And because they're in the Champions League, they've got on paper quite winnable round of 16 ties, home and away against Club Brugge. They really want to keep Fernandes until the end of the season. So Chelsea are optimistic because Benfica are engaging with them. But the next step is a Benfica answer before Chelsea can then get into the meat and bones of any kind of final negotiation. So when people say that this deal is done, it might get done. There's confidence it will get done, but it isn't closed yet. And I think that's a really key point because Chelsea haven't heard a definitive answer yet from Benfica. And until they do, they won't know what the next step is, because what they're not going to do is just wait and wait and wait and wait and then put down crazy money on crazy payment terms simply because they want the player. This isn't Football Manager. At some point, they will move.
Pretty good at that, Ben.
At some point, they'll move to a different tactic because this one makes no financial sense, or they'll get their way on the payment terms. And we should know the next stage in this, I would say, within the next day or two. But it is premature, despite Chelsea's cautious optimism, to be reporting at this point that the deal is done.
Brilliant. That was a great summary from Ben. Ben, I just want to read out a few super chats. I think I've missed out on one. Any news on the takeover from Ben? I presume he means about Liverpool. We're going to come and touch on the Liverpool ownership so we can save that for later. And then we have another one from Rabadam. Ask Ben, how come FFP doesn't apply for Chelsea?
Well, it does apply to Chelsea. It's just they've got a tremendous history of selling young players, which means their books are in quite a healthy condition. So when we talk about either financial fair play, which are the UEFA rules, or the Premier League's profit and sustainability, which are the domestic version of the financial rules and regulations, you have to essentially show losses that are either 105 million or less as far as FFP is concerned. And then with the Premier League, there's a little bit more leeway, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic, because you can offset a lot more of your losses. And Everton most famously somehow did that and declared much higher COVID losses than any other club in the Premier League to balance their books, which raised eyebrows, but it's a legal loophole. And FFP has these legal loopholes. But in essence, the more success you have and the bigger club you are in terms of your infrastructure, things like an academy that Chelsea invest millions into every year, the more not only cost can you offset, because there's youth protection clauses that allow you to sign young players in your academy and not have all of those costs on your books. But in addition to that, you generate a steady stream of players that you can sell. And they don't always make the media, but ultimately what you've bought for so many of those academy players in terms of the actual money needed to educate them, coach them, train them, bring them over, pay a transfer fee, even if they fail, what you then can sell them for is going to outnumber that in 9 cases out of 10 when you're a big club. Because if Chelsea signs somebody, as we're even seeing now, they've brought in players like David Datro Fofana, Santos is coming in as well. Even Carney Chukwuemeka at Chelsea, they're all still under 20 million. And that's a huge amount of money for young players, don't get me wrong. But if they don't work after 3 or 4 years, they'll probably be worth a similar value or more, especially as the market inflates, which means that your books are constantly selling players for profits, whether they succeed at Chelsea and stay at Chelsea or don't. Because that number is so high at Chelsea, 600 or 700 million over the last sort of decade or so, they're able to spend a lot more. And then when you add the brand value and the commercial deals and the Champions League money, it puts them in a much healthier position than people realize. Add to that the fact that if they sign a player, ideally they want to divide those payment terms over more than 3 years where possible. So then again, not all of the transfer fee goes onto the same financial fair play cycle. So if in theory you were allowed to, just to give you an extreme example, to try and explain it in the most basic terms. It's more complicated than this, but if in theory I let you pay £100 million transfer over 100 million years, then that's £1 a year. So then only £3 would be into every current financial fair play 3-year cycle. And clearly that's a farcical example to give because you're never going to get those terms. But the longer the payment terms are, the more you can offset it across multiple years. And fans only look at the number as being big, and they don't realize how many years that number's divided over. So the short answer is basically Chelsea can't keep spending 250 million in every window, but they can certainly do it for the next 2 or 3. Because it isn't 250 million, it's 250 million divided by however many years each of the transfer fees are paid across, and then minus whatever they're making from their academy, from their brand costs, from Champions League money, should they qualify, etc. So they are more comfortably within financial fair play than people realise. And 1 or 2 other clubs do this very well, particularly Manchester City. Liverpool are not bad at it as well. And that's how you get round financial fair play. You spend big because you've got solid academy systems that are a steady stream of income. And believe it or not, you offset your big spending on a fee for a player like Enzo Fernandez off the failures at your football club, because statistically 6, 7, 8 out of every 10 will fail. And by fail, I don't mean necessarily they'll never get a look in, but that of course happens for a lot of players. But if 10 players are on the periphery of your first team, 1 or 2 could be box office stars. 1 or 2 could be squad players for a bit. But either way, the vast majority have the ability to be sold on for more than you bought them for. And look at who Chelsea have offset, the likes, for example, of Romelu Lukaku when they first got rid and then now brought him back and still getting a loan fee from Inter. Players like Tammy Abraham, another good example. Chelsea have been able to cash in a lot more from outgoings, and that keeps them within the financial fair play guidelines, even though it appears like they're spending a lot of money in a very short space of time.
And if we miss out on Enzo and he heads towards London and Chelsea this coming month, the next name on every Liverpool's fan, and they're praying they get this sort of certain type of profile of player, Ben, a Caicedo or a Amrabat. But everyone's favourites now seems to be Moises Caicedo from Brighton. We know the player really well. We've seen him at first hand, put some brilliant performances at Anfield, and I'm sure the lads, Cheen and Shide, would agree. But what's the latest on the Caicedo deal? And has a bid from Liverpool gone in?
It hasn't gone in, and I obviously reported that first and got relatively hammered on it because there were contrary reports out there that said there had not only been a bid, but there'd even been a second bid. But I think now there's a bit more consensus in the media landscape that there hasn't been a bid. Obviously, every fan's entitled and should, by the way, go to the sources they trust and read the stories that they believe to be accurate. But my understanding very early and from the word go has always been that Liverpool have not bid for Caicedo. And I am confident in that position still, having made a series of inquiries. And the reason why they haven't bid for Moises Caicedo is because Brighton are under no obligation to sell, especially not mid-season. And even though they lost Graham Potter, they are playing a very attractive style of football under De Zerbi. You only have to look at the loss to Arsenal. And even though it looked at one point like Arsenal would run away with the game, Brighton almost made that game 3-2. The game was in the balance. And I think that there was a real feeling after Potter left that everything might fall apart from a infrastructure point of view, because a new manager comes in, player has aspirations. We know that Trossard's agent is calling around to see what deals might be available. We know that Caicedo is very ambitious and has just come off the back of a World Cup. And we know that Alexis McAllister is a World Cup winner, will be in the market as well. And some people even think that Pascal Gross could be there or thereabouts for 1 or 2 other Premier League clubs. But nothing has really changed in the infrastructure at Brighton, which is quite impressive because remember, they didn't just lose Graham Potter. They also lost Carl McCauley, the recruitment expert. They lost Paul Winstanley, who's now on Chelsea's recruitment team. And they lost Dan Ashworth, their former sporting director, to Newcastle. So huge upheaval at Brighton. But from a playing point of view, Paul Barber has done a very good job, the CEO, along with Tony Bloom, the owner, of keeping everyone together. And now Brighton are saying that Moises Caicedo is a 70 to 75 million pound player. And that is not in keeping with the valuation, despite his high potential, of clubs like Liverpool. And the more important point on top of that is just that Liverpool have looked at this deal before. And again, I've reported this many times. When he was still at IDV in Ecuador, the club that he represented before joining Brighton, Liverpool were seriously interested. And they would have moved for him, except for the fact it was not the kind of deal that Liverpool do, because the player had multiple agencies representing him, all kinds of people asking for a slice of the pie. It was a messy negotiation. And having put it to my Liverpool sources this time around, whether they would come back into him, because they have got a historical interest in Moises Caicedo from his time at IDV back in 2019, 2020. Are they going to come back in? Because he's obviously now in a position where he's playing regularly in the Premier League. I think he's already doubled his Premier League game time in 2022-23 compared to 2021-2022. But the answer from the sources I speak to and senior sources within the club is still no, because it's exactly the same situation. You've got all kinds of costs, all kinds of agents claiming to represent the player. 2 weeks before the summer window closed, he got another new agent. And each time you bring on an agent, and sometimes players do have multiple agents because they have one back home, they have one in Europe, and other times it's just that they don't have exclusive representation, or there's a grey area because of different relationships and partnerships and family members. And everyone's got a bit in writing with Caicedo that says, I get 5%, I get an agent fee, I get some kind of monetary amount. And this is the challenge with that negotiation. When he changed his agent towards the back end of the summer window, it happened all over again. And the new agent started putting out new feelers, started asking for different kinds of fees, started asking for new ballparks of wages. Add to that the fact that Brighton don't want to sell and the transfer fee is very high, and it's just not a deal that Liverpool want to do at this stage. So categorically, I've been told that the notion that they did for either Enzo Fernandez or Moises Caicedo is nonsense. That was the word that was used by a senior Liverpool source within the club, that any notion of a bid for either of those two players is nonsense. So all we can do as journalists is report what we believe to be accurate. And I think now it's probably quite 50-50 out there in terms of some saying no bid, some saying two bids. But to reiterate, my understanding remains there's been no bid for Moises Caicedo.
Just before jumping in, I say, Ben, obviously, if there's no bid for Caicedo, I think it was clear and obvious when we played Leicester. There's gaping holes in our midfield. So, is there any news on any other midfielder that Liverpool are looking at, especially with the news that's come out recently that we're not really looking? So, it'll be interesting to know your thoughts on if another midfielder is possibly going to come in Jan.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, Liverpool are always going to say the same thing, and I think it's relatively sensible. They temper expectations. They only buy if a player can genuinely add and improve. But of course, because as you've correctly outlined, there's a real need for somebody in midfield. It's a very strange window for Liverpool because there's a balance between short-term urgency and long-term fit with the club. So usually when I talk to Liverpool sources within their recruitment department, they say that you have to seek somebody that will be a long-term strategic signing for the football club that can improve the squad and improve as a player. So then not only do you get somebody that is Premier League ready, but you also get somebody that ultimately is the right age and of the right ceiling of potential that can give you value over time, both on and off the field. And now they need to explore something that actually is a quick fix. And obviously Manchester United are the same in the sense Ronaldo leaves and they need some kind of traditional number 9. But that goes against your long-term strategy, which is about window planning. And Liverpool have always been very good at that. So window planning means that you know who you're going for, you've worked on them for multiple windows, and you move at exactly the right time in the market. And as a consequence, if everything goes according to plan, you don't need to always alter that strategy, which is why Liverpool have quiet windows. So officially at the moment, they're saying, in terms of their briefings to media, if you like, or conversations with sources if they aren't briefings. A briefing, by the way, for those of you that don't know, will more likely come from a press department and will very rarely be about transfers, but it might be about things pertaining to transfers, such as, for example, the takeover and its timescale that can affect things like budgets. And then we obviously get a little bit of information that we can use in the context of a January transfer window. And most of what you get comes from a sporting director or a club official or an agent or a player. And that obviously is why we don't disclose the sources in those cases, because it's said to us without that ability to be able to name them. But there's pretty clear consensus at the moment that Liverpool will not move unless the right name becomes available. They won't buy for the sake of it. They moved towards the end of the market for Artemelo, and that is a straight loan. There's no buy that Liverpool are considering. There's a buy, by the way, in the contract, but it's what's known as a give, which means that when Liverpool agreed to that option to buy, it was simply something they conceded within the negotiations, but they've said very clearly all along that they always plan on sending him back. So I don't think that he is somebody that will be there for the long term, regardless of whether, should he get fit and burst into the side and be an amazing Liverpool player, anything changes. So then you start to think, well, who else could they move for? And my understanding is that in the long term, they are still putting all of their eggs in the Jude Bellingham basket as far as a dynamic midfielder is concerned. And the beauty of Bellingham is that, although not available in January, come the summer, he has that excellent tactical ability, as well as his maturity and talent, to, as he showed for England, drop in next to Declan Rice in a 2 or play further forwards. And I think that Liverpool love that versatility. They love the maturity and leadership. So again, as I said before, you have to think, if you're going to invest that money and you're confident in being a front runner in that transfer, then why use January to buy a stopgap if it clashes with that approach or strategy? So this is the balance for Liverpool at the moment. Alexis McAllister is another name that they like. Whether or not he's available again in January remains to be seen. And then you've got a few players that are highly unlikely. Yuri Tielemans is a name whose agent came to Liverpool and came to Newcastle, and obviously Arsenal were the big one where Tielemans wanted to move, and Liverpool were not interested in Yuri Tielemans. And I don't see that changing in January either, to be perfectly honest with you. Though Tielemans would love a move away from Leicester, Arsenal's always been his most likely and preferred destination, but there's nothing happening there. So suddenly Tielemans available in the market at a smaller price than in the summer, but he's also available as a free transfer at the end of the season. So I think clubs like Arsenal that are more advanced in that situation will try and tie him down for the summer on a free transfer, but we're going to have to wait and see. I don't think there's anything in a Liverpool link with Yuri Tielemans, but that type of player late in the window might become available. I also don't think that there's too much with the link between Liverpool and Amrabat at the moment, but I do know that there is a long-standing scouting of a player like Amrabat from Liverpool that predates the World Cup and by quite some distance. So they're clearly looking, but as I said right at the start of this answer, it has to be the right name and not just a panic buy.
Shahid, if we put all our eggs in the Jude Bellingham basket, yes, he's a dynamic midfielder. He's versatile, just like Ben touched on. But Liverpool's midfield, just like, Sajid said against Leicester, and it was just not from the Leicester game. We've seen it for many, many games now this season, where Liverpool need more than Bellingham. And if you just look at Liverpool, it's clearly an area that they've neglected, in terms of investing in that area. We've got Milner, who's probably going to leave. We've got Naby, who's got a question mark regarding his fitness. We've got Thiago, who's got a question mark regarding his fitness. Is just Bellingham the answer?
See, the thing that they're neglecting is that as the time passes, the players that they have even right now, they're beginning to get a bit of a drop-off. So Hendo played really well at the World Cup, but he's returned. First match was pretty decent. Second match, a little patchy. And then you turn around and you look at like Ox is not the same player he was when they signed him. He's been through a couple of injuries. His position is not really sure. Keda's had a lot of injuries. He's at the last 6 months of his contract right now. It'll be possibly the big contract of his career. So he might not want to put his foot in there or risk it too much. So the existing options that they said in the summer, which is probably one of the first times Klopp has made a mistake, which was to say that he had all his midfielders prepared and he couldn't find better midfielders. And it's been discussed how Núñez was available, a few other midfielders were available in the market. It just seems that they have completely ill-prepared the midfield for this season. And now they don't seem to be moving quickly enough in the winter to arrest that issue. Now, we do know that they had a really tough time recovering from the close quadruple, and maybe they weren't prepared to quickly come into action in the summer to replace the midfield because the team had been so good, and you don't want to mess with the mixture of the players. However, while we were recovering from the defeat, they were buying Tchouaméni from underneath our noses because they're used to that and they just work like that. The way they picked up Ozil, the way they pick up Cruz, the way they picked up the player from Brazil the other day. It's just, they seem to be a lot more committed to preparing for the future. Liverpool have just entered in the last 6-7 years the big leagues after being away from it essentially for 30 years, barring a few years in the early 2000s when we won the Champions League. So that big club mentality is something that we're still coming to terms with. And we haven't even replaced Gini, one midfielder in 6 windows. Again, you're putting a lot of mileage on those Thiago legs, which, because he doesn't have the support around him, similar to what happened to Fabinho earlier in the season. It's the way the gegenpress works, or the way the Liverpool press works. Everybody has to have the legs, and it's got to work like a machine. And I'm of the firm belief that the drop-off in Trent and the drop-off, which quote-unquote in Virgil, even in Robbo, I just think that there just isn't enough legs in midfield to protect them, and they get outrun and overrun match after match after match. And it's just a collective bunch of midfielders with the injuries, with the age, with the lack of new signings. The entire midfield is just not working well enough. And he's exposed what was a year ago one of the bright lights of Liverpool's future, Harvey Elliott. Now they're talking about Van Dijk and they're talking about Bajcetic, and Harvey Elliott is an excellent player, but you're throwing him into the lion's den match after match, match after match. He's a youngster. He's coming back from an injury. He needs to not have everything on his shoulders and to ease himself in. Like Michael Owen, I mean, you get a player like Michael Owen once a generation. Okay. And Bellingham is that player as well, which is why Liverpool's fighting really hard. But there's a lot of excellent world-class players who do not have to excel at the age of 19, 20, 21. And they build themselves up and they go through a much more traditional way of becoming a world-class player, which Elliott will become. So I personally think Liverpool need at least 3 midfielders, and they need to move as soon as possible. And the names that are being thrown around are good names. You know, they're youngsters. They fit the age profile. What Arsenal have done is they've just done what Liverpool had done 4 years ago, which was put a bunch of youngsters together who are hungry, who are maybe on the early swing of their contract. Keep in mind, there've been a lot of contract extensions to Liverpool as well. And I'm not saying that's a negative thing, but I'm just saying that obviously there is a little bit of a subconscious difference between when you're fighting for and building up your contract and when you've already gotten it. So the thing is, you need to have the right type of mix. It's not player to player. It's the entire holistic philosophy of the club. And Liverpool don't have enough players who are looking for new contracts. And they've got a lot of players who've gotten renewed contracts. And I just feel that the age profile, which has been discussed, and they're rapidly trying to react to that because, of course, the owners will not let that get messed up, because that's like the value of the club. So if you want to sell the club.
I think we've lost Shahid. Bad connection. But I think he was on about Liverpool buying 3 midfielders, Ben, and he touched on right at the end with the. Oh, I think we've got him.
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah, but go ahead. I think I've said what I needed to say. Go ahead.
Do you want to finish off, Shahid?
No, I'm okay. I just was the age profile everybody knows.
He mentioned 3 midfielders. If we're going to buy 3 midfielders, Ben, we need new owners and new investment. And we've got plenty of people in the comments asking about the ownership, So here you are. The stage is yours.
Well, I think the Liverpool takeover and the Manchester United one are very different. The parallel is the fact that they're both processes designed by Americans for Americans. And that means that the most likely investment group coming into Liverpool, whether as owners or minority investors, will have American links. Of course, a lot of people are talking about the Middle East and North Africa as well. And some of those that have made inquiries have also got US offices and personnel that are out of New York, which again lends itself towards this process that's being designed by Americans for Americans. But the key difference between Manchester United and Liverpool is that the Glazers almost certainly want a full sale. And at Manchester United, that's heading quite rapidly towards progress within the first quarter of 2023. It wouldn't remotely surprise me if we have a preferred bidder for Manchester United advancing that process quickly and either looking to get in or very close before the end of the season. So therefore, if you're the Glazers, your next 2 transfer windows are relatively impacted by that. Whereas with Liverpool, I think the FSG is still in it for the long game, and it will depend upon the quality of pitch put to them. So my understanding is still that nobody on the FSG side has been given a preferred status yet. It's still too early in that process, and nobody therefore is in any kind of exclusive period. But there's been a number of inquiries, some credible and others not. The lion's share of conversations so far have lent towards minority investment, but FSG are open to both options. If they sell, they would expect to make 10 times the return that they invested. If they have minority investment, it can be for a variety of reasons. One, because they just want cash injection off the back of the Super League failing, off the back of the pandemic. But also, minority investment doesn't have to be minority only. So you can have an exit route over a longer period of time if you're FSG, whereby perhaps you invite a minority owner in and you give them the option to enhance their stake of shares over time until, who knows, potentially it's a majority. And I think that we're going to see that at PSG, who have got 2 American investors, and one of those 2 is now in an exclusive period of discussions to buy between 10 and 15%. But by 2030, PSG may say, through their ownership group, Qatar Sports Investment, we actually would like to exit now. And the minority owner may then choose to acquire the majority of the club. So we're not quite looking at that in Liverpool's case at the moment, but it's going to be a slower process than Manchester United. And you'll get a clue as to the direction it's moving in 2023 based upon the actual candidate that moves into either a preferred status or an exclusive period. Now, Liverpool may not announce that in a statement, but usually when somebody goes into a preferred tag or an exclusive period, it gets out pretty quickly, as we saw with the Chelsea sale. So once that occurs, if it then appears to be moving fast, 99 times out of 100, it will be minority investment only. And if it is a slower process and it goes quiet, then there is a chance that the suitors talking to Liverpool are more likely outright consortiums looking to buy. So then when we look at who's been linked with Liverpool and who the specifics might be, I know, first of all, that Sir Martin Broughton, who is a former Liverpool chair and bid for Chelsea, they're still in what they call the, quote, thought process, which tells you that there's no hard deadline on this. There's no urgency to run and rush. So early in the new year, I expect Sir Martin Broughton to make a decision as to whether he does or doesn't want to be involved in anything around Liverpool. And what's intriguing is that the Harris Blitzer combo, who partnered with Sir Martin Broughton to bid for Chelsea, and they were very close, by the way, to winning Chelsea. Bowley Clearlake, who ended up being successful, and the Broughton Harris Blitzer consortiums had very little between them. And eventually, obviously, Todd Boehly succeeded, but they had everything in place. So I think the feeling was when the tender first went out for Liverpool that Harris Blitzer and Sir Martin Broughton might partner again. But as I understand it at the moment, the Broughton part of that consortium is still in the thought process. And Harris Blitzer are looking for opportunities everywhere, but I would be surprised if they went for Liverpool as majority owners. Especially with their stakes in Crystal Palace. They'd have to get rid of those stakes anyway, but I think it's more likely that they will either find other partners to form a consortium as they did for Chelsea, if they choose to proceed with Liverpool, still pretty early stages, or if they don't do that, then they would probably only be looking at minority investments. And then given that they've got shares in Crystal Palace, perhaps Liverpool is not necessarily the right prospect for them. But the clue in all of this with Harris Blitzer is that they've said openly these assets don't come along that often. So there is some intrigue to investigate. There is some intrigue to have a dialogue. And at the moment, like many of the suitors or investment partners, they're trying to understand the price, and Chelsea's sale will be used as a yardstick for that. And on top of that, they're trying to understand the dynamic. When might FSG be prepared to sell and at what price? Or is their preference minority investment over an outright sale? And with the Glazers, we've just got a slightly clearer sense at the moment that the Glazers would prefer a sale. I think FSG are 50-50 depending on the strength of the offer. So I think Liverpool fans are maybe seeing a lot of change at the club with Ian Graham, with Julian Ward, and they're thinking, yikes, everything's changing and we're going to get new owners. But there's much more continuity behind the scenes than people realise. And several sources have told me, for example, that the replacements for those outgoing at Liverpool who will stay until the end of the season are already in place. And they're even shadowing in one of those two cases, which means that Liverpool were not surprised by the statement of FSG. They were not surprised by a possible sale or investment, and they were not surprised by the outgoings on their data and recruitment side. Because if they were, how would they have found a replacement? How would they have bedded that replacement in one of those two cases? And I know which one of those two cases, by the way, but I can't disclose that at this point. But one of the two.
Oh, come on, Ben. We were looking for an exclusive tonight.
I can't say anything more than that, but I do know for sure that in one of those two roles, Liverpool have had the replacement in for quite some time, shadowing the outgoing, which again tells you that they're planning. So this is kind of a key indicator that Liverpool are not expecting big wholesale change. And then coming back to the takeover, the other kind of interested parties that some people have suggested are coming from Qatar. There's no truth in that, as I understand it. The process, if you want to invest in sport in Qatar, is still to get the blessing of QSI. Not just as a courtesy, but as a requirement, because otherwise you're going to struggle to do business from that region or garner the support you need. So my understanding is that QSI have not had any indication that there is any credible Qatari interest in either Liverpool or Manchester United. I know there was some talk that the head of the Qatari Olympic Committee might be a name to look out for. And then, of course, moving to Dubai, we have this history of the Sheikh trying to buy Liverpool and a lot of excitement about the Sheikh's son being a Liverpool fan and all of that. But again, these are things that have been exaggerated in the media and require more due diligence and substance to them before certainly I would be in a position to report that anything is moving in that direction. And the Bahraini Sovereign Wealth Fund, who were linked with Liverpool in the past before, many years ago, they also have denied it. Apple and Amazon have denied any interest as well. So I come back to what I said before, that there will be a lot of interest, because when you make things public like Liverpool do, you get a range of new inquiries. I still think that Harris Blitzer and Sir Martin Broughton are one to watch, but they have to make up a decision first. And until they do, it's irresponsible to make a prediction, but they haven't said no. They've said that they're in the thought process, which is clearly an indicator that they want to work out what the prospect is. and do more due diligence before formulating if it's worth making an approach. And then I think within the Middle East, was there to be a bid? My understanding is that the private sector of Saudi Arabia, most likely in a minority investment, but possibly with an offer for some kind of full sale, could be a possibility. But they haven't moved yet. So people are saying, well, maybe PIF, the Newcastle owners, would be involved. They won't. It's as simple as that. And when I was in Qatar for the World Cup, I, like a number of my colleagues, spoke to the Saudi sports minister, and he made it very clear, both on and off record, that they will support in a non-financial sense any bid, and they will help private individuals if the deal comes off. But they also said they've got no knowledge. So people are sort of saying, well, it might be Aramco, or it might be somebody connected somehow to the tourism sector. Not my understanding, but there are a few private individuals that are certainly interested, at worst on the minority side. Prince Alawid is one who has actually got a better relationship with the French government, and on a couple of occasions has explored Olympique Marseille. And every time he's asked, he says that he wants a club. Hasn't said he wants Liverpool, but he's always looking on the market. And some might be familiar also with Turki Al Sheikh in Saudi Arabia, who is the Almira owner and is a real character. And he's the one to watch, really, because he will not buy either Liverpool or Manchester United, but he is the deal maker. He is the person that brings things to fruition. So what we're waiting for from that region, and I'm talking a bit broader now than Liverpool, because I want to make it clear, because I'll get misquoted on this. There hasn't been anything substantial or concrete yet from that region. But if it materializes, then, and I know this from other takeovers I've covered, I know this from takeovers even that Turki Al Sheikh hasn't been a part of directly, that you go to someone like him in the same way that I said before, you go to someone like QSI, because you need them to make the introductions. You need them to find the funding. Look at Al Nassr and Ronaldo. They're only paying about 30% of the total package. So they went to a guy called Mohamed Al Kharaji, who tried to buy Chelsea, and he's an Al Nassr fan, and he's connected to the club. And they said, we don't have the money, but we want Ronaldo. So Al Kharaji, who is part of the Saudi media group, said, don't worry, I'll go out and I'll find you a load of private investment partners and we'll get the deal done. If it happens like that, that's how a consortium will be built within that region. That's just the dynamic of how it works for both Manchester United and Liverpool. But it's an if, and it will be more time consuming, and we won't probably learn about it until later in the year. Whereas, as I said before, if it's minority investment, it might be a bit quicker. And my sense still remains with Liverpool and with Manchester United, but we wait and see, because there's been a few inquiries. But my sense still remains that these takeovers will be designed by Americans and for Americans. So it is the North American sector that is the one to watch, as the leading individuals behind it anyway.
Interesting stuff. For those who expected Liverpool to be exchanging hands in the first quarter of 2023, I think we'll be left disappointed. But as we know, these things can change so quickly, especially when it comes to ownership and investment and even transfers. But Ben, before you go, we've got a few people, and we promised to ask the question about Mudryk and Shakhtar Donetsk, and if Arsenal can get the deal over the line. I'm not going to ask you if he's keen on moving to Arsenal, because every time I check his Instagram, he's watching Arsenal on his iPad. But can they get that over the line?
Yeah, they're very confident. And as I've reported many times, Mudryk wants Arsenal. Arsenal want Mudryk. So it's about the negotiation with Shakhtar now. And when I interviewed Mudryk, which you can see on CBS's website and also on my personal TikTok, because I reposted it, he was very clear, and this was months ago when I got an exclusive with him, that he can't say no to Arsenal. But Shakhtar are tough negotiators. So I believe, certainly as of this morning, haven't made a inquiry since about lunch today, but as of this morning, Arsenal have not yet tabled a second bid. But since the first bid was rejected, and very quickly, they have been working with intermediaries to try and get it closer. And there's a growing confidence because Arsenal do not believe that the fee for Mykhailo Mudryk will be anywhere near 100 million euros, which is what Shakhtar are saying publicly. But privately, Arsenal have always been confident that anything above 60 million euros would be a starting point, a marker, which is why they bid around that. And then somewhere around the 70 to 75 million euros mark, Arsenal believe will get done. And getting it done isn't about the number, it's about the structure. So Shakhtar want more money up front and they want preferable payment terms, and Arsenal want to try and keep the overall cost down and not pay as much up front, which is why Arsenal's original offer had a large percentage of add-ons. But Arsenal's original offer also had a large percentage of add-ons because they wanted to lay down a marker. And again, that's really key, that when you're trying to get a deal done in that region, it's atypical. The negotiations involve lots of people. They involve lots of egos at times. They can involve multiple board members. They can involve intermediaries, middlemen, lawyers on behalf of the club. It's not an easy region without local experience to get deals done. So Arsenal sensibly hire intermediaries that understand the region and have dealt with Shakhtar before. And when it's in a position where they believe it will be successful, that's when, again, you come back in as Edu and you have more direct contact. There has been direct contact between Edu and Shakhtar, and quite a bit. But once you get a rejection on offer one, you let the intermediaries and the middlemen and the lawyers do the work. So I've always said that something around 55 million euros guaranteed, with about 15 or 20 million add-ons, something in that ballpark. For 70 million, maybe 75 million, Arsenal have growing confidence that that will get done. And it will all depend on the structure of the deal. Shakhtar, of course, will try and hold out for 80 million if they can, but Arsenal's approach won't be just to hand that to them on a plate, because that's not value from Arsenal's perspective. And if they were to pay out 80 million, then they would have to have some kind of give in their return, such as longer payment terms or less upfront from that. So, you know, this is again the thing during a transfer window, to try and understand that the number is not always as important as fans think. I think when you're watching the window, you say, okay, we bid 60 million, now we'll bid 65 million. Wait, they want 70 million. Why are we quibbling over 5 million? Just pay the 70 million and sign the player. And that, again, is a fan falling victim to a football manager mentality. But the reality is that the payment terms, the money up front, a sell-on percentage, side fees, tax liabilities, what you pay versus the length of contract, what you pay versus how much on the length of contract, I mean by what you're offering, but also what's left on the contract, because that, of course, dictates the value as well. All of these things factor into what equals value. So a buying club can't just keep raising the amount and hoping it gets accepted. Sometimes they'll lower the amount. And that's what's quite sort of interesting, that if Arsenal bid one time, and I'm talking again more generally now, so you understand the window, the second time, Chelsea did this with Wesley Fofana, for example, they might actually bid the same amount, exactly the same amount, but they might say you can have it in a lump sum instead of in 4 payments, and see whether that works. Or they might actually bid less upfront and add to the add-ons. So it seems like more, but it's actually less upfront. And this is the gamesmanship. Otherwise, if you just keep going up, then why wouldn't the selling club keep rejecting and rejecting and rejecting and leave you right until the end of the window and then say, we know how desperately you want and need this player. Now you've got a choice between paying this amount or walking away, and you've got all of the cards. So a negotiation is give and take, and Arsenal can't show all of their cards early on. So I would expect them to put in a second offer probably within the next day or two. And I would expect that second offer to have more up front, but not be too dissimilar from the first offer. And then within the next week or so, if things don't move based on that second offer and they have to make a third offer, I would expect them to round off around the 70 to 75 million euro mark at the top end. That's their preference anyway. and there's high confidence that that type of deal and that type of amount will get done. So the likelihood remains that Mykhailo Mudryk will be an Arsenal player before the January window shuts.
Brilliant, interesting stuff. But judging by Arsenal's form, I think they're chasing back. We'll hope he feels the medical on deadline day. But before I get clipped, wishing bad on players. But Ben, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I thought we were going to have you on for about 30 or 40 minutes, but your insight and how much we've enjoyed, myself included, and our viewers, your insight and all your knowledge about various issues that we've discussed. Honestly, really, really thankful of you sort of giving up your time on a Sunday evening. I'm sure we've pinned up all your socials on the description. If we haven't, I'm sure we'll do that. And just generally, thanks for your time, mate, and I hope all the new year brings a lot of success your way, but more importantly, good health to yourself and your family. Thank you very much for coming on, mate.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. Keep up the good work. And we went on for an hour because my answers are never short. So that's something you've not heard me before. You will learn about very quickly on podcasts. But happy New Year to everybody. Health and success, of course. But also, I hope that you all have good windows, whoever you support. I know the Liverpool fans in particular would love me to be wrong and find that they do three midfielders. So if anything changes and they do come in, then I'll obviously let you know. But let's just enjoy the window, enjoy the new year, and fingers crossed whatever team you support has a good second half to the season.
Brilliant. Thank you
very much for that, Ben, and we'll catch up soon.
All the best, guys. Take care.
Cheers.
Take care. Shahid, you're the optimist, so I'm coming to you first. And like Ben said, all the fans, Liverpool fans especially, will hope he's wrong, even on the transfer sort of news, on the ownership issue. Because according to Ben, like as he was saying, that this could be a long process. And as we've seen, it's sort of inhibiting our progress because the investment has been needed for a long, long time. And FSG have come out publicly and put that tender out and sort of try to gauge interest because it's a sort of an acceptance of them sort of accepting that they need to change. If they don't change, they need to bring some sort of investment, whether that's, through a full sale or a strategic partner, like, the reports of John Henry being interested in that. But whatever it is, Liverpool need to act quickly. And just like Ben was saying, when it comes to Caicedo, if we have to pay 10-15 million pound as a premium, then so be it, because we don't want to lose out on Champions League.
Well, I found what he said about the contracts and the side deals that were required to sign Caicedo. And I thought to myself, well, Brighton were able to do it, so why can't Liverpool do it? I mean, I didn't really I don't understand why Liverpool would shy away from that now that he's Premier League proven as well. So you are getting a player who's done well at Anfield just in the same way. With regard to the overall strategy, I mean, what Jurgen said in the last press conference was basically we need to sell to buy, which is a huge acknowledgement. This type of talk was not made openly by Liverpool previously about finances, and he's been quite open in the last 3 to 4 months with regard to that he wants the players and the club isn't prepared at this moment to provide him exactly what he can get, which is like the slightly veiled message. But obviously there is no doubt that the club does not have the £250 million that are required to revamp this midfield. And that is the big worry for Liverpool fans. They've actually wasted the time when they should have regenerated the midfield. And now when they go back to do it, everybody knows that they need players. And that's why I thought maybe the Joyce tweet could be something of a camouflage to bring the rates down again, saying that, we can get away with it. Look, we've won a couple of matches. We got Cody Gakpo coming in. We could move him back as at number 10. But Liverpool need actually sixes. They need number 6s. They don't need number 10s. I mean, with Fabinho going for congratulations to him, of course, for the birth of his son. But I mean, without him, again, we got exposed. Again, we looked sloppy. Every other player's performance went down. The good news was that he came back from the World Cup. The first match he played aggressively, he played well. So I think that's the big worry right now, which is that we need those players. And the club itself doesn't seem to be moving fast enough, and the clock has already started ticking today. Now, the takeover, again, I've already given you the Joyce angle, which is optimistic. Maybe he's doing the club's work to bring the rate down, and maybe the club, because we can't believe as fans that the club would take such a huge risk with the future of the club by not investing something in an Amrabat or in a Caicedo at this moment, because you are liable to lose Bellingham as well, who you have been has been your holy grail for like 2 years. You're liable to lose him if you don't qualify for the Champions League. I mean, that is worrisome for us. Now, again, Jurgen has mentioned that we don't want players who are only interested in the Champions League, but it's 2023, and you can't really expect a player to come to you if you're not in the Champions League. If he came and you're not in the Champions League, you say, oh, he's only coming for the money. That's what we used to say to Manchester United. So you have to provide ambition to these players. The best thing that can happen to Liverpool is a full takeover or massive investment. Again, optimistically, there are rumors in the US that the FSU are interested in the Commanders. They're interested in the Las Vegas basketball team coming up. It could just be talk, but they want to do a flip, basically, in which they take that money and they invest it in, as they did in the Pittsburgh Penguins, and they kind of build a football, a basketball, and a ice hockey team triangle. And then that's what they need the money for, and that's why they're looking at selling Liverpool. I mean, the pressure of owning Liverpool is also quite different to North American sports franchises, where you get the draft if you finish last, where there's a lot of guaranteed money from television, there's no relegation, there's a lot of parity, you're not expected to win every year, you can go around. I mean, the Patriots and Brady with the Buccaneers have changed that a lot, but in general, you don't get the dynasties over there. With regard to Liverpool, every Saturday we go to the stadium. If we don't win, it's like death. It's like death.
No, 100%, 100%. But Gene, how do you see it? Do you think there was a pot of money left for January, and Liverpool just had to prioritize because of the injuries to Diogo and Lewis? You know, do you see them sort of using up that? The management team have just looked at it, and I know there's so many question marks to our midfielders in terms of fitness issues and form as well. I could just run through them if you want. Hendo or Knabi or nobody bar probably in terms of form as well. But anyway, that's a conversation for later. But do you see Liverpool have just prioritized and said, you know what, especially with Bobby getting injured as well after the World Cup, we just need to make sure we bring in an attacker, and there's too much pressure on Nunes and Salah.
Yeah, look, if you look at Gakpo, look, he's a player that Liverpool have looked at from the reports that have been out there. So he is somebody that we wanted. Obviously, with United wanting him, United wanted the same player as well. And look, the midfield is, you know, I know we only had a couple that were available against Leicester. You know, Liverpool will see it as like, you know, Arthur Melo's come back, Naby Keita's fit again. Curtis Jones is sort of back, even though he's picked up a bit of a niggle. We've got the 6 or 7 midfielders are back now. So they're probably thinking, okay, Diaz is out, Jota's out. Let's go and get Gakpo. At least the forward line is sorted, and forward line is sorted. But on midfielder wise, it's a massive risk that, if you ask me, that we're gone with we've got 6 or 7 now, and we'll go with that till the end of the season. Look, we all know the issues that we can see in our midfield, and I find it baffling that we're not in the market to sign one, especially with Ox going, with what's his name, Ox, Milner, and Naby going. That's 3 midfielders going. You're putting your eggs in one basket, like Ben mentioned with Jude Bellingham. That is still not enough, especially when you know Thiago's injury prone. Avi's, what's his name? Arthur Melo, sorry. He's only on a loan, so he's going to be gone in the summer. Curtis Jones injury prone. How much can you rely on all of these players? We just can't rely on them. Again, yeah, Yunus has said, you know, Hendo's 33. We need minimum 3 midfielders. So for me personally, I wanted one at least to come in Jan. Give him a 6-month bedding in process, so he's sort of up to scratch at the start of next season. Because we generally do give a player 2 or 3 months coming into a side like Liverpool. Bed in, Fabinho had the same, Ox had the same. You know, are we expecting to buy 2 or 3 midfielders come Jan? come next season and say, okay, guys, you're straight in. It just doesn't work like that. And this is an accumulation of bad planning over the last 3 or 4 years, like Shahid Bhai mentioned, that we just never replaced Wijnaldum. So it just doesn't make sense why we're not in the market to sign one. There are players out there that will improve the side, and we had to be in the market in Jan. And yes, look, Shahid Bhai, I know he was very optimistic, saying that this is a ploy to bring the price down. I disagree. I think we're just not going to buy one. If Joyce has come out and said that, Ben's just come out and said that, then that the writing's on the wall. It doesn't seem like we're going to sign one. I'd be over the moon if we got one in, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah,
I think the Gakpo price was just too good for them. They cannot say no to a bargain. Okay, so I think that when they saw the price that he was available for, and when Virgil had basically brought him on board, and of course, look, we cannot deny that the forward line is set. Okay, for the next 5 years. So that's a great move. The goalkeeper's the best in the world. Okay, his replacement is excellent. The center backs, you still have quite a lot of talent there. You've been grooming Reece Williams. You've been grooming. You still have Nat Phillips, Sepp Vandenberg. There's a lot of preparation going on in the center back position. And Konate is like one of the world's premier young center backs right now. So that's a fantastic signing. Jota Diaz come back. Your forward line is great. So I think the Gakpo move, you can't, when you come up with an opportunity like that, and he is a great player, 6'4" as well. So I think that was an opportunity they couldn't say no to. But obviously, Liverpool fans on January the 31st will be asking questions and to say, come on, we had forwards. Someone has to get the ball to them. So if you don't have a good midfield, how are you going to get the ball to them?
Yes, 100%, which probably segues nicely into our topic of the Leicester game. If there was an example where we just need to stick it up in a wall and see how bad our midfield is at the moment, then the first 30, 40 minutes, or even the first half of Leicester is a prime example of that. But Sheen, we've talked about our midfielders so many times, and we'll probably regurgitate the same points on and on and on. But there has to be a solution. If there isn't a solution, then we need to make sure we do something to somehow take that top 4 position, because at the moment, if you judge it by today's results, it's going to be a really, really scrap. And the likes of Tottenham, and who else dropped points yesterday?
Newcastle, Chelsea
today, Newcastle yesterday as well. And it's going to be a fight, and there'll be so many twists and turns to come. There's a lot of games to be played out. But what do you think about Liverpool's solution in midfield? Because at the moment, I feel like in Harvey Elliott and even Carvalho at times this season, we're trying to play a certain way, and we're making this transition into a more of a possession-based team. But I feel like if you're going to do that, then you just need to make sure you say, okay, we're going to make ourselves a possession-based team and keep the ball more. Even though we've done that to an extent, it's taking time, and I feel like we need to play proper midfielders in midfield positions. And at the moment, with the likes of Carvalho and Elliott, especially against Leicester, we're just expecting too much from him. And in terms of a positional sense, he's 5 or 10 yards further up the field, and then we're asking him to track back. Well, he's just far too away from the ball. We're expecting too much from the kid.
Look, we've sat here all season. Most Liverpool fans have grilled Fabinho. Hendo played the 6-1 game, and look how bad he was. And that's a simple truth. You look at Harvey Elliott. It was a game where he really, really struggled. Didn't really offer us much offensively. Really didn't offer us anything going the other way. So, you look at our defense, and look, we need Fabinho back. Fabinho came back. He looked a bit refreshed. The Man City game, I thought he had a decent cameo when he came on, and the first game on his return, I thought he had a decent game. So him coming back, playing in the 6, fine. Obviously, Thiago will be there. It's the final position which we have to get right, and not look. This is that final position where we had to really strengthen. sorry, and we haven't. But we just have to hope, pray that we get this top 4. And we, barring any injuries, hopefully we'll get it. I'm still confident, look, that we will get top 4. I'm I think we've got the know-how. And, in a crazy way, I think we've won our last 4 league games. Don't ask us how we got there, but we won the last 4. And, with Brentford tomorrow, which is a huge game, it's massive because they're on they're a really, really good side. They've beaten the best sides. They've had good performances against the top sides. And I think the 6th, 7th, 8th in the league right now. So they'll be up for it with the news. Even Tony might be sort of fit for the game as well. But in the midfield, I think there's gaping holes. We saw that against Newcastle. We saw that against Leicester. But we just, hopefully, I'm hoping Fabinho's back and he plays. But we have to. The issue that we've got right now is there's just when Harvey Elliott plays, he just doesn't give us enough defensively, especially playing on that Trent side. And Trent obviously bombs further forward, even though recently, he doesn't get as far forward now. He's a bit more assured. But honestly, from our side, we just have to hope and pray that we do really, really well going forward in terms of our midfield, in terms of their play, and that their form improves more than anything.
Yeah, Shahid, what do you make of Harvey Elliott? Because he has some good games, but are we expecting too much from a kid who's just literally come into the team, especially the way we've started to change the way we play? I know we've touched on it in previous shows, but I'd be interested to know what you make of it and how we've gone from a striker of Bobby's ilk on the halfway line, connecting play, being the catalyst to the attack, but similar to the way of Man City have Haaland. They've got a big man up front, but they've got the players to feed him. They've got the progressive midfielders like De Bruyne and Bernardo. But we try to make that a bit of a similar concept at Liverpool, where we're feeding the big man into the channels who's on the shoulder of defenders. But at the moment, we just don't have that type of midfielder because we're changing the way we play, and it's going to take time.
Well, like Saj just mentioned, we're trying to become a possession-based team, but I'm trying to understand why. Did anybody find a solution to our fast-paced, gegenpress, quick turnaround team that we had with Mane there when he left? And then we thought, okay, we're going to get Haaland and Nunes are the same type of player, but Nunes is more like Mane, in my opinion, and more like Salah. After seeing him for 8 or 9 matches, he's lightning fast. He's quick and direct, and he's pretty much a perfect Liverpool player. His finishing is the main problem, obviously, but I personally think he's a good fit for us, and he's not a possession-based player. Salah's not a possession-based player. Salah's ending up on the right wing when you're doing the possession-based football. So I actually think the tactics also, I would like us to go back to the previous tactics we have. However, if you're doing the data matrix of the midfielders and you're getting data back telling you that the legs are gone, obviously you're going to start thinking to yourself, okay, let's become a possession-based team. But is that because that's what the coaching and that's what the players want? Or is that because they haven't been refreshed and we haven't been given newer players to spell these players and so they can come in and change their roles and evolve as their age goes up? Same thing for Elliott. His age profile right now, he should be playing one match, then maybe taking a match off, then maybe coming off the bench, then playing another match, then maybe taking a game off, so that he can bed himself in and so that he can be exposed to more positive moments as opposed to being in crisis all the time, which you will get as well. But I personally, like I mentioned earlier, I think that he's being put under a lot of pressure. He's an excellent player. I believe in him completely. There is a little bit of being pushed off the ball a little bit too easily, but that's the way the youth. That's a problem with regard to age as well. Like, not everybody's a Konate who comes in big and strong, and that's why he's a center back. So I think that Elliott can do it. I think that it was going well last year until he got injured. He had Hendo grooming him. He had building him up. He had Trent coming from the side, and Virgil and the whole team was kind of helping him evolve. And now the team isn't doing so well, and then he's having to play in these matches when one of the three basically right now, Fabinho, Hendo, and Thiago. So when one of the three drops out, Elliott has to come in, and maybe he would be better if he was number 5 on the depth chart. And obviously the elephant in the room is Keita, who's been gone for 6 months and who actually should be maybe number 3 on the depth chart. playing instead of Hendo, because Hendo's 33 and Hendo deserves to come in for the last 35 minutes, put the armband on and control the tempo of the game and have the legs for the 35 to 40 minutes and completely dominate that. But after the work has been done by the younger Keita. So I get somewhere along the line, the recruitment hasn't caught up with the reality on the ground. And I mentioned this earlier. I really believe that this is a virus that is spread into the other positions as well. So all of a sudden, you've got strikers who are feeling a lot of pressure when they get the chance, that the ball's not flowing fast enough to them, so they're not getting an XG of 8 or 9. So they're only getting 2 or 3. So they snatch at the chance. You got the center backs who are pushing up, but thinking maybe I should drop back. But if I drop back, I don't have the legs, so I'm going to push up. And then you've got the protection isn't getting on them fast enough. Like if you listen to the manager's press conferences, it's very clear that the ball that is played from midfield is the one that has to be cut out. You can't expect your defenders to go one-on-one the way Liverpool set up in the other half, to go one-on-one 15 times a match. That can only be 3 or 4 times a match. So the other 12 times you have to be basically hounding the other team's midfield so that they make turnovers and errors. You saw the reaction of Klopp when Mudryk went in, putting the tackle in. It's basically he looks like a guy who's been starved. This is what he wants every minute of the match, what he expects from his midfield all the time. He hasn't gotten it. So it's because of the legs. Now, what happens is they get turned. You give time to players in the midfield. They ping a pass into the wing. Your right backs exposed one-on-one. Your center backs are facing their own goal. I mean, it'll be a disaster and a tragedy if they don't sign anybody and we miss out on the Champions League. Frankly speaking, looking at the way the league is going right now, it's very frustrating as a Liverpool fan that we're not even in the title race. With regard to the Champions League, we're talking about it being a scrap, but this is Liverpool. We're supposed to be the top three teams in Europe. Manchester City, Real Madrid, Liverpool. If we get ahead of steam, we should blow everybody out of the sea and just fly straight up the table. Maybe end up second, maybe end up third. Champions League should not be our problem. Okay, this is what the form would say. But right now, I mean, we're all looking over our shoulder towards tomorrow with worry. But Brentford, it's a third match in 7 days. You're the richer club. You have the bigger signings. You have the bigger players. They have the bigger contracts. You have the bigger squad. You should be able to use your squad depth versus their legs. They also played on the same day as you did. I'm thinking you should be able to win the match. But because the squad is not evenly constituted right now, we're worried. Okay, then fix it. Okay, you can't fix it because the window's not open. But the window is open now.
100%. Well said. Well said. But coming over to another midfielder of ours, Gene, Hendo, he's been a brilliant servant to the club. But when, it's poor performances like that come at Anfield, and let me make it clear, I'm not having a go just at, Hendo. The whole team was shocking, especially for the first half. But, that is concerning because generally speaking, I know he had a World Cup, but you can't give, Liverpool midfield an excuse now in terms of freshness. That generally speaking, we only had, 5-6 players who went to the World Cup. So freshness and tiredness is not an excuse anymore. We should be coming out of the traps and, really pressing teams and going and squeezing teams like Shadbai touched on. But it's not happening. But do you think there is a responsibility on the management then to sort of, I don't want to use the word neglect, but they didn't see this situation coming where they want Liverpool players to really counter-press the same way, really go push and squeeze teams up high up the pitch. But simply, we just don't have the legs or the personnel to do it anymore.
You look at the midfield, the amount of times that Hendo was bypassed in the last game was ridiculous. The first goal, I don't want to talk about it because everybody's seen the first goal. It was Thiago on his own. And you mentioned in our post-match, Asim, you felt sorry for the kid and for Thiago. And I was the same. I felt sorry for him. It felt like at times he was the only midfielder who was doing anything. he was doing Hendo's job. He was the one that was breaking up play. He was the one that was getting the clever fouls. And look, Hendo has been an amazing servant for the club. I know he's reaching the age of 33 now. I see him in a Klopp midfield. Can we do at somebody at the age of 33? We need players that are in their prime. The Fabinho, he's sort of in his prime now, so we should be he should be marshalling our midfield. And of course, he missed that game. But look, we can't make any excuses. We're Liverpool Football Club. We're an elite football club. Man City lose a midfielder. Who comes in? Who's their worst midfielder that comes in? Gundogan. That's the difference. That's the levels that we're talking about. We're looking at bringing in little kids at times, or we're bringing in injury-prone players. Look, I thought now when Naby came on against Leicester, I thought Naby was okay. Maybe give Naby a chance. I know he's only here for the next 6 months, and I know he probably gets injured, and I know all of that. But he's there. He's taking his wages. Bring him on. And I know Fabinho hasn't been great, but he looked refreshed the last couple of times that he's come on. And look, I think the bottom line is this: you've got youngsters and you've got players that are hitting 32, 33. We don't have players in their prime. We have one, which is Fabinho, a player that has been absolutely run ragged. You saw that at the start of this season, his legs had gone. Come on, how can people come up to me and say Fabinho's legs have gone when he's at the prime? He's at his prime, 28, I think Fabinho is now. So he should be at his prime. But because he's been run completely ragged, he looks lost. He looks tired. He doesn't have the support. So bottom line is, when you don't make moves in the market, this is what happens. Mm-hmm. The other clubs went into the market and bought the players. We signed a loanee from Juventus, who's an injury-prone player anyway, who come to our club injured and got injured within 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah,
we're an elite club. Act like an elite club.
100%. But I did promise you guys we'll come over to the positives, because for an hour and a half I feel like there's too much negativity. We're not getting bought, we're not buying anyone, and we've got a rubbish midfield who can't string 2 passes together. But there were some positives, I promise you, with Leicester. Like Jean touched on, I thought Thiago, although he was fighting a lone battle at times, I feel his performance was really, really good. And Trent, Shide, I thought had a good game. I thought it was a toss between the two for the man of the match award. And someone, when I sort of tweeted it out a couple of days ago after the game, someone came at me and said, look, how many times did he lose the ball? But there's a feeling amongst Liverpool fans, yes, he does lose the ball, but you can't expect your playmaker, who's expected to overlap their winger, who's expected to come into midfield, into the half space, and be a third centre-back in the build-up at times this season, as we've spoke about in previous shows. How many times is this? How much do you expect of this playmaker? But in terms of his tackling and in terms of his dynamic play and marshalling Harvey Barnes, who's a brilliant winger, I thought, who had a decent game himself, I thought Trent and the way he played was a big, big positive for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think more important, also important was his interview with Sky afterwards. So what we're looking for is clarity of thought. When you're clear up here, you can play well down there as well. So usually when the managers start making complete nonsense, when they're not making any sense at all, that this axe is coming or they're going to leave themselves. So at the end, when Julio or Benitez, some of the press conferences got completely off the radar, and I was like, it's not looking good. But Trent, when they spoke to him, he self-analyzed, he almost perfectly the way that he was playing, the way his season had gone, and it looks like he's in a much better mental space. Maybe the World Cup being over, and he even mentioned that whole overhang of whether I'm going to be in the England team or not affected him, or maybe he just decided, if I'm not going to get the support from the midfielder, I'm on my own. And it takes time, because you had this incredible midfield, which was flying into people, and Trent and Robert were going up the pitch, and they had Gini and Hendo coming in and covering them from the side, and they had no worries. And all of a sudden, they get exposed. Trent being a local boy, I mean, the quadruple, I mean, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We're already out of the Carabao again this year, so Capital One. So there goes that once-in-a-lifetime opportunity this year. So what happens is that was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. There's this mental drop-off that can occur when you come so close to it. I think that's something that hasn't been discussed at all, which was the mental drop-off for Liverpool after coming so close to winning the quadruple. We as fans, we have to move on. We have to get on with our lives. But the players, it was a great opportunity. But Trent himself, he took on Harvey Barnes. He managed him. He took care of him. The argument, I was watching the match with my nephew, and he's like, you guys are hypnotized by Trent, because I even told him, look, Trent put the ball in for the equalizer. And my nephew is the only one relative in my entire family who's gone off the wayside and become a Chelsea fan. But he was like, well, you guys are just hypnotized by Trent. But why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we be? Look at his pedigree. He's played, I think, 3 Champions League finals so far, and he's been in. He's played like 3 final day Premier League matches when he was in one of the top 2 teams. I thought he played well. I think tomorrow's a big game for him. There's a lot of scrutiny on him. I don't know why. What the obsession with the media is with Trent Alexander-Arnold. I mean, he's just as, I thought Robbo had a nightmare for the first half against Leicester. I thought his passes were going astray completely. And I'm like, what are they doing? They can't even string 2 passes together. You guys were in the stadium. I wasn't, but maybe it was the conditions. Maybe it wasn't, but come on. The other team's putting their passes together. So Robbo doesn't get the same type of scrutiny that Trent does. I thought he played well. The other positive, I as crazy as this sounds, because I mean, when he misses a chance, I go ballistic. I can't take it. I cannot take such golden. A chance to score is a golden opportunity. You cannot let it go so often. It's 11-a-side football match. You're going to get a few chances in the match. It's an anomaly how many chances Liverpool get with Jurgen Klopp. But these are like gold dust. And when you miss them, that's a game changer right there. And when he did miss one of the opportunities, they almost scored on the other side immediately afterwards. And I mentioned that's what happens. You're going to miss your chances. The other team's going to get an opportunity. But Nunes, nevertheless, continues to cause massive amounts of havoc. I saw him in Qatar from a higher vantage point. His runs are world class. The way he approaches space, the calculation of what run to make and what run not to make is right up there. That does not need to be coached to him. Okay, he has football intelligence and the ability to make the correct run. He's got 2 massive weaknesses, maybe 3. One is his offside. He gets caught offside again and again and again, which is diabolical for a professional footballer. Second, he's missing a lot of chances, which I think he'll stop doing very soon, as Klopp has mentioned as well. And third, he's a hothead. Okay, so these 3 things have to be.
I like that though. I like that, Shahid Bhai.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a little bit.
I want us to have a bit of bite.
Yeah, but he's just a little bit more than I would want him to be. Just a little bit more. And of course, I thought Mo played well too. So I thought there were the positives. The problem with Thiago playing well, like you mentioned, I mean, come on, like Thiago, there's a certain amount of energy in those legs, so that he has to be protected. Like last season, I was even thinking they should take him off after 60 minutes every single match, regardless of what's going on. We cannot afford for this player to get injured at all. Look at what happened when he got injured against Fulham. It was a disaster for the next 6 weeks. So they're gonna. Ideally speaking, he shouldn't play tomorrow. Looking at his injury record, he shouldn't be playing tomorrow. Somebody else should be spelling him. He should come off the bench. Hendo, look, you mentioned Hendo. Hendo's a great player, unbelievable servant for this club. His leadership is amongst the best I've seen in the 40 years that I've supported Liverpool. He's a very good leader. However, at this stage of his career, he should be coming off the bench for 35 to 40 minutes. And Milner, who's another generational player, don't forget this player has been in the league for more than 550 matches. Okay, we're talking about one of the best ever Premier League players. He should be coming in for 15 to 20 matches. Instead, you got him playing right back against Phil Foden. That's disservice to the player as well. You're exposing these players and it's not their skill set strength. So Harvey Elliott should be playing against midfields where there are not huge physical presences. You pick him for those matches when the other team does not have that huge physical presence. Instead, you're throwing him out there in these huge physical battles, and then the confidence gets shaken. The fans get a little bit lose a little confidence player. But there's nothing wrong with these players. They're great players. It's just that the time scale has changed a little bit, and they need adjust accordingly. I'm sure they know this. This.
Yeah,
they're much more intelligent than we are.
100%. Yeah, talking of physicality, guys, tomorrow is going to be a physical match. Brentford put you through a stern test, don't they? Whether it comes from their set pieces, their throw-ins, their long balls. And I can remember the last year's game where I thought we've stopped playing our football, and Liverpool and a Klopp side can be sort of accused of this far too many times, where we sometimes get involved in a yo-yo game, where it's you have a go, then we'll have a go, you have a go, we'll have a go. And I think we just need to exert some control into the match from an early stage, not concede a goal after first 5 minutes. I hope that doesn't happen, but we just need to make sure we play our football. And once we play our football, we let our football do the talking. I have no concerns, but it's not going to be easy tomorrow.
Asim, look, we Brentford away. We saw last year. We gave their fans something to shout about. In this game, we've got to come into this game, take control of this game very, very early, and that's so important. We need to quieten the crowd. It's a small crowd. The ground's pretty close. The fans are raucous, let's say. So it's a game that we need to, grab it from the scruff of its neck very, very early. Look, if we play our football, we win the game. We cannot make this game come into a physical battle, because that's the last thing we want. That's their game. That's what they want. They play a 3-5-2, Ivan Toney up top. So that just tells you they're gonna pack that midfield. And the way we play, our midfield is playing right now, it's gonna be a stern test. They played against the let's say the best sides, and they've had really, really good results. They beat United 4-0. They drew to Chelsea, beat Man City. So that just tells you how good this Brentford side actually is. And I know it's a physical battle, but they've got players that will actually hurt you as well at the same time. And Mwemba, I think that's how you pronounce. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he's got a sweet left foot on him. Their midfield is. They were there. You talk about workmen like they will fight for every single ball. So we have to be ready tomorrow, and they've got decent fullbacks. Ben Mee's a decent centre back as well. So it's going to be a tough game. But I believe, look, if we turn up with our quality, it should show. We just got to play the football on the ground and manage the game, because the last thing I want is for us to, like you mentioned, let's not go toe-to-toe. We're cleverer than that. We want to be able to play games where we play, we're good enough to play football rather than anti-football, let's say.
Brilliant. Shahid, if there's one player I want in the team tomorrow is Ibu Konate, because I know it's Brentford, but he suits that. I'd have him in my team for every single day of the week and twice on Sunday. But against Brentford, you need his physicality. You need his sort of tenacity in the tackle. He's absolutely brilliant, and we're glad he's back with us.
I personally think that if he started the final, which I was at, France would be the world champions right now, hands down, without a doubt. So that was a massive mistake with regard to selection of him, and that just tells you the pedigree that he's held at right now. And in my opinion, that this is the year in which every single time the lineup should be Virgil Konate. Like when we won the league, it was Virgil and Joe Gomez, and then in between some of the good years, it's been Virgil and Matip. So I think this is Konate's time, his physicality, regardless of whether it's a physical match or not. Frankly speaking, he's got great speed too. It's his time now. He does not need to be prepared anymore. He needs to be given the keys to the castle, let's say, as they say. With regard to Tony, we don't know if he's going to start or not because he looked in bad shape, but Ibu can manage it. He can manage it. Now, I don't remember with the 3-3, was it last year or was it the year before when Sadio missed a header in injury time? But that was quite the ding-dong match that we had over there. let's see what type of tactics we come out with. But I will say this much, Saj, it will probably be a physical battle. It's January, it's the Premier League, and it's Brentford away. If you're thinking this is going to be silky football, a night game, by the way, evening game, the floodlights are going to be on. Whether we don't know, it could be, you guys will be there, so it could be sketchy. It is going to be a tough battle. And if we get 9 out of 9, I would consider that a miracle from God, considering the performances we put in. Even at one time, 2-1 at Villa Park, I was thinking this could turn turtle. This is not looking good right now. So Arsenal, I think, are optimistic to get 9 out of 9. United are optimistic maybe to get 9 out of 9. But look, City aren't going to get it. Newcastle aren't going to get them. Spurs aren't going to get them. Chelsea aren't going to get them. So 9 out of 9 is a great winter, let's say Christmas season for us if we can somehow pull it out of the hat tomorrow. But I think it's going to be nervy. Look, it was nervy today, and they weren't able to do it, both the clubs, Villa and Chelsea. So, the Premier League, when I was watching the Chelsea match, even the Villa match, Premier League is by far the best league in the world. There's not even a league close to it. The parody, the drama, the way these clubs are attacking the bigger, well-known clubs, and how every match is turned in battle. Come on, we all know how lucky United were against Wolves, and even previously, before they left for Qatar against Fulham, even the match before that, when Rashford scored, they only won that one by 1 goal. So I think that every match is a battle. Every match is a battle, but Liverpool have already given the other clubs a big lead. Liverpool cannot come back and say, oh, we played well at Brentford. We dropped 2 points, 7 out of 9, good performance. That time is long gone. We cannot afford to drop any more points. And with regard to it being a critical summer for us, if we're not going to do anything in winter, we have to move to summer. A critical summer for us to refresh our club. If we're going to, we mashallah made the Champions League 5 years in a row. This is not the summer to be out of the Champions League, and the fan base cannot handle it. We cannot handle it because we've had that sweet fruit, and to take it away from us at this stage will really hurt.
Shahid, the boss told us, where's the final this year? Istanbul, book your hotel. Yeah. So we've got it booked. I'm sure you've got it booked as well. But before we wrap things up, take your predictions for tomorrow. Gene, I'll come to you first.
2-1 Liverpool.
2-1. Shahid, 7-1 Liverpool?
No, I'll go 3-1. I also agree that this team finds a way to concede goals nowadays, unfortunately. Yeah. Even though we have by far the best goalkeeper in the world. One-on-one, one of the best goalkeepers I've ever seen in my life. One-on-one, but still somehow, I can't believe they concede with this goalkeeper and Virgil in defense. It's mind-boggling. Virgil, I saw playing for Holland in Qatar. He looked really, really good. He looked like the old Virgil. So don't keep an eye out for him. Inshallah, he will give a performance tomorrow. That's my prediction. Virgil.
I'll go for a 3-2. I'm predicting a brace for the big man up top every single game. But
he has been every game.
I'm going to stick with it until he
gets even broken clock is correct twice.
No, maybe you shouldn't say. I say maybe you shouldn't say he's going to score and he will score.
Yeah, maybe. But I'm a teat. I'm going to stick with it. 3-2. He's going to bag a brace tomorrow. What we're sure about, he's going to get a hatful of chances, isn't he? So it's up to him if he's gonna take it. And let's hope, because like you guys said, it's going to be a stern test, which I'm looking forward to. We've never been to the Brentford Stadium, so it'll be a good one to experience. But that's all we have time for. Shahid, honestly, a genuine thanks, not just from me and Saj, from all the team. There'll be plenty of guys on Twitter and all the socials being busy. But when it comes to sort of debuts live on our channel, I think you take the match ball today. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming. And you've got plenty of fans in the comments as well. So we need to bring you on more often.
I've got quite a lot of private messages saying get Shahid on every week. So be prepared.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. You guys are doing a great job. Thank you.
Than're Shahid. What time is it now where you're at?
By the way, guys, next show
2:30.
Thursday. Yeah.
Sorry, Saj?
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. I want to. Yeah, it's 2:30 a.m. Bloody yeah, Shahid bhai, you need to get some sleep, man. You've probably got a busy day, knowing how busy you are. But before
Yeah,
I
you know my
just remind
schedules.
everybody, yeah, just let everybody know about the Thursday show that we've got coming up.
Yes, we've got a game or two halves on every Thursday, where from time to time we'll be bringing a guest on. But since it's silly season, since it's the January window is open, I'm sure you'll all be wanting to sort of stay in touch and updated with all the transfer news when it comes to Liverpool and generally everything else as well. And we've got, just to kick off that show this Thursday as part of our January special, we've got another brilliant guest. So stay tuned for that. I always get told off on my private text messages, even during the show. Asim, you never tell all the viewers to subscribe and like and this and that. And it just goes over my head. I'm so engrossed in the conversation. So yeah, I'll get another telling off from the admin guys. But on the way out, please, if you haven't liked and subscribed to our channel, please do so. And let's hope the Reds grab 3 points and a convincing victory. I don't care if it's convincing, actually. We just need to get any sort of win and bag those 3 points and come up the M1 with 3 points and a good victory as we climb up that table and we maintain our chasing mood this season. Thank you very much for having us. Thank you very much for all taking part. It's been a good one, and have a good night, and we shall see you soon. Take care.